Hey Kyle, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Good. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to
Absolutely.
chat food with you.
Yeah, I was excited when I got invited, so thank you.
Looking forward to it. So tell me a little bit about so you're a chef.
I
Tell
am a
me a little
chef.
bit about your background and your experience. Like, where have you worked as a chef? What are you doing now? What's your plan moving forward? And all of that.
Sure. So I started cooking by complete accident. Was never meant to be a chef. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what the difference between a cook and a chef was. I never had that food epiphany. I never had the memories of cooking with. I was supposed to be a Marine, just like my father and my grandfather before that. 2003 came along while my father was deployed. I decided to hold off on recruiting. So my mom said, Kyle, you need to get a job. And I didn't know what that meant. I had never even thought about anything other than joining the Marine Corps. So a dear friend of mine told me he can give me a job as a dishwasher. And I took that job and, as so many chefs have started out, the dishwasher job turned into a prep cook job. And then my first night working on the line, I fell in love with it. The adrenaline, the teamwork, the camaraderie, the commotion. And about 3 days into cooking, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I'm one of those guys that's when I set my goal on something, I really obsessively go for it. And
Hmm.
so I spent the next 12 years really going for it, taking any opportunity I could, reading books, doing the 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. shifts, different restaurants, just trying to get as much experience as I could. And I hit a stalemate in Tucson. That's where I'm from. And I literally was watching an episode of Top Chef. And they were cooking at a restaurant called Bricks in Napa Valley. And I was intrigued by the farm to table idea and the movement. And so I literally turned in my 2 weeks. I was working at the Westin La Paloma here in Tucson. I turned in my 2 weeks, got on a plane, went to Napa Valley, had never been there before, went to Bricks and got a job. And that's really where my knowledge of cooking, like I had the basics of
Hmm.
cooking. But when I got to Napa Valley, that's really when I think my um, finesse came from. The chef there was super intense, super old school. He was definitely a yeller and a screamer, but I owe so much technique
Mm.
that I learned from working with him, and I'm very grateful for him. And at this point, I wanted to open my own restaurant. That was the goal. So I told myself I'm not going to turn down any opportunities that come my way. So that a lot of people tell me I was lucky and that I was in the right place at the right time, but I put myself in those places to be where I
Hmm.
wanted to. And so going from Bricks, I was able to work at several other restaurants in Napa Valley on gel. And then my then girlfriend. Then she became my wife, and we are now divorced. But she was working as a pastry chef at Metawood, and kind of got my foot in the door. And that's really where hospitality became. The cooking part was there. I knew how to cook, but that's where the hospitality aspect really started to kick in.
Hmm.
Where being a yes chef type of person, and that meant whatever the guests wanted. Like it was yes, we can do that for you.
Mm.
If it meant um, sending somebody into town to grab an ingredient, we would say yes, we can do that. But it could take several hours.
Hmm.
And from there, I became the liaison from the garden. So my day started going to the Meadowood Garden and walking the fields with the gardeners and the farmers, and then taking that information back to the kitchen with the executive chefs and showing them what was available. And that's where I think, love for different ingredients really started to blossom. And from
Mm.
there, became the executive sous chef at a hotel called Bourdain, which at the time was the number 2 luxury hotel in the United States and number 25 in the world. Completely sustainable. We had a CCOS certified organic garden on property. We ordered from about 30 different purveyors on any given day. The hotel was made of reclaimed wood, and all of these moments really helped create who I became as a chef. I had a daughter at this point, and so my daughter learned to walk in the French Laundry Garden. And so she would come to Artisono and harvest radishes with me, and then those radishes would become the amuse-bouche for the guests. So the server was able to tell the guests, these radishes were just pulled with chef and his daughter, and those stories and those emotions really morphed me into who I am now, to where I am finally comfortable as a chef to know who I am as a cook and as a chef.
That's really cool.
What's that?
I said that's really cool.
Yeah, as a young cook, you're always going through your head like, I want to open this type of restaurant, and then 2 years later you're like, thank God I never did that. I want to open this type of restaurant, and now I'm at the point where I know who I am as a chef.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's sort of like when an artist figures out their a style, and usually for a few, sometimes even a decade or more, that's sort of what they do until they decide they want to move on from that, but sometimes they sort of settle into it. You mentioned that when you went to Brix, that changed a lot about how you saw cooking. What would you say some of the ways what are some of the ways in which your way of thinking about cooking changed?
So here in Tucson, the style, it's the line cook mentality, where it's, we cooked it to temperature, but we weren't thinking about the product, if you will. Searing duck is a perfect example. I learned how to cook a duck breast, learned how to cook it perfect medium, but I didn't understand the rendering process of the way you cook the fat. That is the kind of thing that at Brix I was learning, how to slowly render it out, how to cook it, and then when to flip it at the right time. Cooking fish, I learned in the beginning, hot pan, throw the fish in, flip it, throw it in the oven. At Brix, I was learning control the temperature of the flame and really focus on getting that skin extra crispy, or getting that scallop with the perfect brown color. And those are the techniques that I really wanted to learn. And
what would you say the secret to a perfectly seared scallop is?
So scallops have become one of my favorite things to cook, because I'm looking for that perfect brown color. So what I do is I get the pan. I don't get it ripping hot. I get it to where the oil is glistening and kind of separating, and I season it with just salt. Make sure it's dry, and then put it in there, right, and start the searing process. And then I treat the flame almost like if you ever watch somebody at P.F. Chang's or Panda Express working with a wok. They're constantly checking the temperature of the flame. And that is the trick for me to cook a scallop, is just really keeping an eye on the flame and keeping that temperature just right. And you get just this perfect golden brown scallop that's still perfectly cooked in the middle. And then flip it over, and then I give it a quick baste, and that's where you kind of finish it off.
Nice. Yeah, I just did scallops like a week ago or a few days ago, and yeah, they're tricky to get right, because getting them to that seared brown color while still not getting them too overcooked and rubbery and not undercooking them, it's a tricky, and they're very fragile. So that's yeah.
They tend to want to stick, and I think one of the big tricks is making sure it's dry. Like using a paper towel and getting that as dry as you can, and then not seasoning it with salt until right before it goes in the pan, because they really do, like when you put salt on it, they start extracting the moisture. And
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
moisture is the killer for that brown. So you want it to be dry so that when it hits the pan, it just kind of tenses up and does its thing. It's a
Cool.
beautiful cooking
Yeah.
scallops is when you can do it right. It's one of the I love teaching cooks how to cook scallops, because it's one of those things where it's a delicate product, and it's when you overcook it, it really can ruin a diner's experience.
Yeah.
If you undercook it, the same thing. So it's that is where you can start to tell technique from a cook's point of view. When you can see a cook who knows how to cook scallops, or really any fish, that's where you can really tell technique.
How would you usually serve scallops? Like if they're perfectly browned, perfectly seared, perfectly cooked, then how do you garnish them with something? Do you use a sauce of some kind or brown butter? What do you do usually?
Actually, funny that you said brown butter. One of the dishes that I did was pan-seared scallop with brown butter rutabaga puree. Rutabaga from the garden, cook it, and then as we're pureeing it, slowly add in some brown butter, so you get that sweet,
almost
flavor.
Caramely flavor.
Yeah,
It's
like
so
that
good.
nutty, awesome flavor. And then we used finger limes, different kinds of citruses from the garden. And then on our cook's prep list, it literally was picking herbs. So the cook's mise en place was they went out and they just picked different flowers and sprouts from the garden, whether or not it's pea flowers or pea sprouts, fava leaves, different edible flowers, and then that was all garnished with it. So that's funny that you said brown butter.
Yeah, I just the best scallops I've had always seems to have brown butter in there somewhere. There's
They
this
do.
restaurant, Maison Premier in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and they do they just serve you the scallops in this little pool of brown butter,
That's
and
awesome.
it's one of the best things. It's just simple, but it's amazing.
That sounds.
Yeah. You mentioned flowers, so I've only had flowers on food probably a few times in my life, but it really fascinates me because it's one of those things that, especially, most people just haven't. They don't consider it. They don't really think, "Oh, I could throw some marigolds on that." What would you say are some of the tastier flowers that are overlooked a lot of the times?
Sure, I am obsessed with edible flowers. My daughter is obsessed with edible flowers too. But I think borage flowers they're beautiful. If you look at my Instagram page, you'll see tons of pictures of them growing. They have like this cucumber flavor almost, and they look beautiful. They're delicious, and they bring a different flavor. And I love onion flowers. Or garlic chive flowers as well, because if you're working with something that has that garlic flavor, you can leave the garlic out and use the flowers as the garlic essence, if you will.
What
And
do the borage ones taste like?
they're kind of almost oystery / cucumber. It's a very mild flavor, but it tastes very fresh. Like I would say cucumber mostly.
Okay. Oh, you said cucumber earlier. Yeah. So it's almost like but I'm guessing it's more of that almost grassy flavor you get with herbs and stuff, or
No,
I don't
it's
know.
really it's not grassy at all.
Okay.
It has a very distinct flavor of its own.
Oh, that's cool. Is it
Yeah.
related to cucumber at all? What is
No,
borage flower? Is it just a flower, or is there a
so borage
vegetable?
is a plant that came over from Europe at some point. You can use the leaves as well. They grow very tall. The leaves are not my favorite, but you can use them. But the flowers just
Cool.
yeah, they just
Yeah.
but you find them everywhere in Napa, because they are one of those things where once somebody plants them, the seeds just kind of take over.
Is that just the whole flower top, or do you do the petals? Like, do you eat the
No,
whole
so
top?
it kind of grows into a 5-point star, if you will, and then you cut the flowers off, and then there's a little base that you pick off because it's kind of prickly, and then what
Oh,
you're left with is just the whole flower. It's about the size of your ring finger nail, if
cool.
you will. Yeah.
Yeah, I started growing some edible flowers like marigolds,
Yep.
zinnias. Those are dying though. Those were tricky to keep alive, but the marigolds are just doing great.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
yeah, and then sweet peas,
Yes.
sweet pea
Yep.
flowers. Those haven't bloomed yet. I feel like they're gonna die too. Basically, what I'm working with is a little balcony and windowsill
Sure.
in little pots. So some things flourish in those, but other ones have just died. So it's
If
tricky.
if the pot is too small, especially with peas, that could be the problem. Is they're getting root bound.
That's probably
Um,
what happened. Yeah, it's pretty small. So
yeah, no, you gotta go big because they especially peas, they grow huge, and so the more space you can give them, the happier you will be, I think.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
I did see oregano flowers for the first time
Yep.
because I was growing oregano and I was like, oh, there's some flowers. I still haven't eaten one, but I imagine it tastes something like oregano.
It does, and that with edible flowers, I am very particular about when we use the edible flowers because, especially with herbs, they taste like the herb. So I'm not one of those chefs that's just like, just throw whatever you want onto a dish because it will change and affect the
Mm,
flavor. So, like I said, if I'm doing mussels, for instance, let's just throw that out there, with a garlic white wine sauce, I will pull back on the garlic and then use garlic chive flowers
mm.
so that they're beautiful, but then that's where the garlic flavor is coming from because it doesn't
Yeah,
have the
that's awesome.
garlic, but it does have a very intense garlic flavor and a very intense smell. And that's what I try to teach people is be very careful with the edible flowers because they do have a flavor of their own. So you really need to be particular about how you use it. Cilantro flowers, for instance, I use those a lot on ceviches, if you will, because you instead of adding the cilantro in there, you add the cilantro flowers so that you're getting that intense cilantro flower taste.
It's beautiful too.
They are, and yeah, exactly. Nasturtiums, they have that spicy flavor to them, and they're beautiful. So if you're wanting to add just a little bit of spice, almost like arugula, use the nasturtium flowers to give it that little kick and that little pep.
Huh.
I
That's
get a
so
whole
if
pot.
sorry, go ahead. Oh, so if someone wants to, like, let's say I wanted to put borage flowers on my food tomorrow,
Uh-huh.
would I, can I obtain them somewhere? Like, or would I have to grow them myself? Like, how would I even get a hold of those?
I have not seen borage flowers sold in Whole Foods or any place like that. You could, in theory, go to a nursery, and depending on the time of year, they've already started to flower. Um, and that, for me, that's the best way to get them because
Okay.
once you pick them, the essence starts to go away. So I like to sometimes I'll have the plant in a pot in the kitchen, and you literally, as you need them, the expediter will cut them off and put them on the dish right then, so that they're at the
Awesome.
peak of freshness. Which, because they are flowers, so they're very fragile and they're very delicate.
Do you just usually put them on just as they are, or do you ever marinate flowers? How does that work?
So, you were talking about marigolds. Again, it depends on the flower. Marigolds are very hardy. They hold themselves together. So I have done bread and butter pickled marigold flowers,
Oh,
bread and butter pickles, the liquid, and then pickled the marigolds very quickly so that the marigold flavor comes through, but you get that bread and butter flavor. So it's something different. Daylilies. I've pickled before, and I've brined daylilies before as well. It really just depends on the flower and how delicate it is. I Dehydrated flowers are also really fun to use. Um,
mm.
I
Like hibiscus?
not hibiscus, but that could be fun. But I'll take onion flowers in Napa at the Oxbow Reserve. Every year, there's like this short period of time where wild onions just grow everywhere.
Mm.
And so this past spring, I went out and harvested a ton of these flowers and then dehydrated them. And then I used, what did I use? I used arugula flowers, borage flowers, and radish flowers, dehydrated them all, and then kind of with a mortar and pestle, I ground it up and then mixed malt and salt in with it. So it was the garnish salt had like
Ooh,
these different colors and different flavors, and I thought it was really fun.
that's really cool.
Yeah,
Smart. Huh. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I think there's a lot of things where clearly a professional chef or cook and a home cook, there's a divide there with some of the knowledge, right? Because I know for me, I worked as a cook in a few restaurants, and I was obsessed. I was one of those people who actually was obsessed with cooking at home before I worked in a kitchen, a professional kitchen. And for me, there were a lot of things that just immediately I go, oh, wow, like I didn't even realize you could do that. Anything from just making a quick mayonnaise based
sure.
sauce, just learning about emulsions to searing things properly. It's hard to remember all the quick, but basically I was learning all these things. Oh, knife skills, of course.
Sure.
I remember my first test as a prep cook. The chef, they were thinking of hiring me. The chef went, okay, chop up this basil, and he's going to time me. So I was taking each basil leaf individually and setting it down, and he wanted to chiffonade, and
Sure.
I was like cutting it carefully into tiny strips, each one individually. So of course it took way longer than the time was supposed to, but then in the end, he did it the right way, and I was like, okay, let me try now. And so then I did it the right way. But stuff like that, I mean, home cooks I find are just there's so much that if you've ever worked as a line cook in a serious restaurant, you just know these tricks that are simple a lot of times, and then you also think, why would I ever go back to doing it the old way?
Sure.
And so sometimes I'll try to teach home cooks I know, whether it's family or friends, like, oh, hey, there's this quick trick, and there isn't always that epiphany. Maybe sometimes it's like, oh, that's cool, and then they go back to doing their version that takes like 10 times as long. I'm like, okay, whatever. But
Yeah, I think I think intimidation has a lot to do with it. I think people see what we do in the kitchens as something that's so intense and so hard to do, but it's really not that hard to do. And I think everybody should work in the restaurant business at some point, just to so next time you do go out to dinner, you have that you know how hard people are working. But it also, I think, like you said, emulsifications, making a basic mayonnaise, it's really not that hard, and it's a lot of fun, and it's way better. But I think a lot of people are just intimidated
yeah,
by the idea, the word emulsification, like that, what does that mean?
yeah,
I love trying to teach, like my mother, for instance, God bless her, but I try to show her techniques, and like you said, she kind of waits until I go away, and she goes right back to
yeah.
the way she
Oh,
did.
I actually have a cool story with my dad where my family, I was getting into cooking steak for a long time. I started cooking it in the restaurant, and then when I stopped working in restaurants, I would do it at home as my go-to sort of like treat myself and treat guests with ribeye steaks or
Sure.
meat strip, that sort of thing. And I realized I preferred charcoal grilled just because of the flavor. And
Yep.
so one time I was visiting my family in Tennessee, and I made that for them. And I think I made a béarnaise sauce too. But the steak itself was just simple. It was just salt and pepper for like an hour before I grilled it, or maybe 45 minutes, because
Sure.
I had found that helped. I guess it kind of cures it slightly, and depending if there's enough fat, it can be good. I have found with the leaner cuts, it's not the best idea because it tends
Sure.
to draw out the moisture, and then it's like kind of chewy. But in this
And
case, it was like
you kind of get that weird, not sear, kind of like that gray, not
yeah,
very.
yeah. So with the ribeye, I did that. I like salted it 30 minutes beforehand and put it on the charcoal Weber, just simple Weber grill, and then served it. It was probably like medium rare. It was probably like a perfect medium rare. And in the past, my family had different ideas about what they liked about steak. My mom thought that filet mignon was the best ever, and nothing can compare to that. And my sisters only liked, well done steak because they didn't want to bleed, that sort of thing. And then, but when my family ate that, they just ate it all up and went crazy over it. And they were like, "Oh, that was amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, it's just salt, pepper, and honestly, you can leave out the pepper if you want. Salt and steak, basically, salt and beef." And so I actually showed my dad how to. I took him to pick out a Weber, and we just got that $100 or $90 basic Weber charcoal grill. Got some mesquite charcoal, and then got him a thermometer. What was it? The Thermopen, I think it's called.
Sure.
Yeah, and taught him how to do it and get it to perfect medium rare with the thermometer. And now he makes it all the time, and everyone just scarfs it down immediately. And it was just like one of those things where it's so simple, but it's so common that, it took me so much trial and error. So I think here's part of the problem. You Google we Google to figure stuff out all the time, right? For some reason with cooking, it's like more bad advice than good advice.
There is. It's I would always say go to a book before going to Google, because Google, I think what happens is a lot of the time it becomes home cooks showing other home cooks how to do things, and they're trying to use the words, but they misguide you. And reading a good old school cookbook, I think, is the way to go. I have way too many cookbooks.
Do you have any favorites?
So the French Laundry Cookbook is definitely one of the most important cookbooks to me, not because of the recipes. It's because I was when I was a young cook, I was working at a restaurant in a strip mall, and there was a Barnes and Noble attached to it. So, again, like I said, I did not have food memories. I had no idea what fine dining was at all. So I would go to Barnes and Noble on my break, and that's the first time I ever read Kitchen Confidential was at Barnes and Noble on my break. But I found the French Laundry Cookbook, and when I opened it up, I was like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? I was like, whoa. I was, the presentations and the words.
Who wrote that again? Do you remember?
The French Laundry Cookbook. I was literally just talking about him the other day, and I couldn't remember his name, and now I can't either. I was watching the Anthony Bourdain Cooks Tour, and he was on it, and we were talking about him.
What's his name? Did you say it? It cut out for a second.
No, I can't remember his name.
I guess I'll just Google it right now because I'm curious. Thomas Keller.
Oh, yeah, he's the chef, but there was also a writer who helped.
Okay. So I saw a photo of you with Jacques Pépin.
Jacques Pépin, yeah.
Pépin? Is that how you pronounce it?
Pépin.
Yeah. So yeah, what's the story with that? Were you actually cooking with him? It says cooking with this guy again. Like,
yeah. So
tell the story behind that.
I have been fortunate enough to cook with chef twice. And again, I think, like I said, being in the right place at the right time, I put myself in those situations. A very good friend of mine, chef friend, was the chef at Péjou, the winery in Napa, and he called me one day and was like, "Hey, what are you doing this evening?" And I was like, "I don't know. Why?" He's like, "I think you should come cook with me at Péjou tonight." And I was like, "Okay." And I show up, and it's a lot of commotion, and I'm like, "What is this for?" He's like, "Oh, Jacques Pépin's new book is coming out, and he's gonna be here." So we got. What? I was like, "Thanks for the heads up," I was like, but yeah. So we cooked 3 different recipes out of his book, and he was not in the kitchen with us, but he came into the kitchen and was tasting the food. And a good friend of mine named Harold, who's also a chef, we were in charge of the roasted chicken dish. And it was like simple roasted chicken, mashed potato, haricot bears. And chef came back and, you know, he was like, "Who did the chicken?" And we were like, "We did, chef." And he was like, he pulled us aside. He was like, "That tasted exactly like my mother's did."
Oh, wow.
Like, oh man, I was like, that's, you know,
Yeah,
I
you
feel
got to
like,
start crying or something
yeah,
at
you know, it's just like,
that
holy
point.
shit. I was like, that is like the best compliment that I've ever
Yeah.
gotten, you know. And then a couple years later, he released another cookbook where he's cooking with his granddaughter, and Peju had him there again. So I was invited back to cook with a Jacques Pépin dinner again. So I think that I'm very proud of. Those are the kind of compliments that I'm proud
Oh, yeah.
able to say with Jacques Pépin's food twice. And the, you know, not, don't care about the news articles and whatnot. Those are the moments that I am proud of, are having those opportunities.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't imagine. Yeah, what was he like in person?
He is exactly like he is on television. He is
Hmm.
humble. He is a lush. He is a lot of fun. He, you know, every single person got a picture with him, and he took the time to, you know, take the picture, but also, you know, talk to you. He was signing books. One of my favorite books is The Apprentice, which is Jacques Pepin's biography. Um,
Mm.
so I've had this paperback book, and so the second time around, when I knew I was cooking with him, I got his autograph in it. And he, you know, he took the time to, especially in the kitchen, you know, he went to every cook, every dishwasher, you know, shook their hand, said thank you, took their picture, you know, signed books. One of the cooks got his knife bag signed, and he was, you know, he was French and he was jovial, and he was, I was very impressed by his chef. I think he's a wonderful guy.
Sweet. Have you had the chance to like? Have you met any other like really cool? Also, I bet there's some chefs that I'm not aware of their name, but because I probably
Sure.
don't keep up with it as much as I should. Like, who are the chefs of the time and who's up and coming and all that? Like, who would you say that's maybe a not like as their name's not as well known as Jacques Pepin, but they're a really influential or amazing or innovative chef that you've had the opportunity to work with, and how did that go?
Man, so Napa Valley is one of those very special places. You know, it's food and it's wine. And again, when I came to Napa, you know, I knew something was going to happen, but I've been fortunate enough to cook with and meet so many chefs that I never thought I'd ever meet. You know, I mean, Thomas Keller. I went from reading his book and dreaming of it to living next door to Thomas and
Oh,
introducing him to my parents. You know, Grant Achatz, we cooked with. You know, I, so many different chefs, and that's one of the cool things about Napa is also, like, I can't even think of some of the names right now.
mm-hmm.
Uh,
So you
but
live next to Thomas Keller?
yeah, like we literally lived right across the street from the French Laundry, and Chef lived right behind there. So, um, you know, like I said, my daughter learned to walk in the French Laundry garden. Me and my daughter's morning routine was to go to Bouchon and I'd get a coffee, she'd get a chocolate Bouchon, and then we'd go to the garden, and the gardeners and the farmers would literally pull carrots and radishes and edible flowers, and my daughter, you know, 2 years old, is
Wow.
like, there's a picture on my Instagram page where she's wearing overalls and a shovel at the French Laundry Garden, you know.
Wait, so
Yeah,
you said you worked there?
I staged there. I did a 2 month stage, and that was about it.
Okay.
I could not afford to work there.
Oh, okay.
I had to get a real job, you know.
Okay. Yeah,
Not that
it's
it's not a real job, but it's you know, the daughter on the way, so needed to go.
it tends to be like more part time or
No, so it was just the stage. I worked for free just for the experience.
Oh, right.
From there, it was minimum wage, and so I needed to, jump on the sous chef wagon and start doing.
Did you work directly with Thomas Keller?
I actually never saw him when I was
there.
there.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
which
weird.
is excuse me, which is funny. I did not see him once when I was there, and then ended up meeting him when I lived across the street. So, but I mean, just like Jacques, Chef Keller is, I think the epitome of what hospitality is. I think he is, he is gracious. Me and my ex-wife went to our second wedding anniversary there, and again, living across the street. Yeah, we literally watched the babysitter from our table playing in the French Laundry Garden with our daughter while we're eating dinner, and my ex she was pregnant with our son, so she couldn't drink. She was like 8 months pregnant, so they did a complete. So I got the complete wine tasting and the wine pairings, and they did a complete separate beverage tasting for her to pair with food. So since she was pregnant, so they had some non-alcoholic sparkling grape juice from France come in just for her, so we can do the toast. And Chef is like I said, with hospitality, he lives and breathes hospitality, and I drive off of just having conversations with him or hearing him speak. He's 100% exactly who he is on camera. He is all about the guest. He is all about the experience, and I strive to be like that as well. I tell this as a joke sometimes, but it's not a joke. Like, my goal is to give people what I'm trying to bring myself, and that's happiness. And finding it for me sometimes is very hard. I suffer depression and whatnot. So for me, hearing somebody like Chef Keller kind of explaining to me, if you will, not in a personal way, but hearing him talk, gives me that way to grasp it, because hospitality, it's something that you're born with, and I think it's something that is in your heart, but you need somebody to explain it to you and how to get it there. And I think the way Thomas Keller talks about hospitality is like the perfect textbook on how to do it. So that's my Thomas Keller man crush.
Yeah.
There. But yeah, I have been fortunate enough, and I am very humbled by my time in Napa. I have met some incredible chefs. I've met some incredible cooks. I've made some incredible friends. The hospitality world there we are a very tight knit crew, and I am not. I am very humbled by my opportunities in Napa Valley and the people that I've met and the restaurateurs, Bettina Ruas and Angel. Her stories, and just hearing people's stories and how they got into the restaurant business is, I think, for me, what keeps me going. The drive and the wanting to be on their level and on par with them, if you will.
Yeah, that's important. I think one of the big pluses in any field of moving to a big city or moving to an area where there's a lot of concentrated talent is that you might, like, I think for me, so I work in the creative space, and I've been a graphic designer, and now I'm a creative director, and I grew up in Tennessee and was doing mostly contracted work, so I wasn't working intimately with many other creatives. And I think what would happen is, as I improved in skill, I would actually think, okay, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good now. I kind of got a handle on this. And then maybe I moved to Alaska, and maybe I work at an agency there and go, oh, okay, that person's really good. Oh, I just learned something from them. Now I'm pretty good. And so it's like my perspective kept changing, as I would think I got to a pretty good level, like, okay, yeah, I'm excellent. And then I would just keep discovering, oh, wait, this person's way better than me.
Yeah.
How can I be as good as them? And it's huge. Like, I think whether you're an artist or whatever your field is, you're a cook, artist, any field really, if you move to a big city. Well, actually, someone gave me advice years and years ago. I asked somebody, I think on Instagram or something, maybe it was Facebook, like, who is a pretty prominent designer, or he's a creative director, what's your advice for a designer that wants to get further in their career? And he said, just move to a big city. Like, that's all he said, just move to a big city. And it made sense because I moved to New York, and immediately I had been honing my skills for a long time, but immediately I was able to do work that was way above what I had been doing in the past. Work with clients and do more auspicious work, and it was kind of a big deal. And there's something to that, because I think if you're in a small town, the danger is that you don't have the necessarily talent surrounding you, right? Sure. That's going to push you to be better. It's not that there's anything wrong with small towns, and in fact, they can obviously be very charming, and a lot of even like extremely reputable and talented chefs will even move back to a small town to open their own operation because they want something kind of low key and have full control of it. But I think if someone's starting out, it's a good move to move where the big dogs are.
Sure. And that's why I moved to Napa. Napa is a very small town, but it's full of heavy hitters. And that, like you were saying, I think the day you stop learning is the day you should hang up your apron or whatever your tool is. I did not go to culinary school. I chose to do it the old school way, and
you're breaking up
4 or 5
bit.
hours early. Are we good?
I lost you for a second. Did your Wi-Fi reconnect or something?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn that off right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, is that good?
Yeah. It's good.
Okay, cool. So yeah.
Oh dang! I lost you.
5 hours early to get my done. Is that good?
Try again. It keeps cutting out.
So I would show up to work 3, 4, 5 hours early.
Yeah, you cut out again. Oh man. That's yeah. That's all right. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, part of I can learn, and I learn from cooks. Just different techniques, and that's really how I learned.
Yeah.
Did we lose each other there?
Yeah, I lost some of that, but you were just saying, you learned from from talented chefs, basically. And that's
even as the chef or the sous chef, like you can always learn something from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're the chef, that cook over there might have a different technique on cooking something that you.
Oh, you cut out again.
To everything you. Damn it.
Oh man, try the Wi-Fi again.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna. All right, here we go. Are we good?
It seems pretty good. Oh yeah, so you were just saying that. You were talking about how even a chef can learn from like a line cook or that sort of thing.
Different techniques, and that's and I think it, as long as you can stay humble, I think that shows a lot of professionalism in and of itself. If you can be humble enough to hear what a line cook has to say and teach you something, I think that will always give you the opportunity to grow and be better. I think that's very important, on multiple levels. One, so that you're learning something, but then also that you're not above them. Like, yes, you might be their boss, but at the end of the day, we're all wearing aprons. We all bring our knives to work, and we're all cooks.
Right.
And I think if you can share that with cooks, it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like they're a part of the team, and that if you're letting a cook show the chef a technique, that makes that cook feel like he's being heard. Not just
Heard.
like, yeah, like, and that helps build the team. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the way a kitchen works, and that camaraderie is through that. Like if a cook goes to a restaurant and sees a dish and learns that technique and then brings it back, we all geek out over it and we're like, oh my God, that's awesome, and like then we all start Googling it and trying to figure out how they did it. And that's the restaurant world, for better or worse, is one of the, I think, the coolest industries, because you never stop learning,
Right.
There's
almost no rules in the end.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
there's guidelines or things that can help you figure out what road you want to go down. But I mean, in the end, you could try something completely new and it could be amazing.
Yeah, it's like the Matrix.
What's a dish that you found that either that you've made or that someone else made that just you're like, wow, I've never seen this before and this is amazing and interesting? Can you think of anything?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about one of my dishes. What I I love cooking meat, kind of like you. Wood fire. That's how I love to cook. I think it's the purest way to cook. So one of the dishes, I really wanted to start playing with the idea of, the nose to tail with animals idea. I really wanted to start playing with that idea with vegetables and just to see how far I could take it. And so cauliflower became my first experiment, if you will. So what I did was I took white cauliflower, hung it way up high over a wood fire, no oil, no salt, nothing, and literally just dehydrated it over the fire, the whole thing. And then I pulverized it in a food processor. And then I made a pasta dough and folded the cauliflower into the pasta dough, right?
Ooh.
And set that aside. And then I took all the leaves from the cauliflower plant and I made a pesto with that. And I set that aside, and then I took the beautiful, like the yellow, the green, the purple cauliflowers. I tossed those with a nice olive oil, roasted them over the fire, set those aside, and then I harvested all of the flowers from the cauliflower, set those aside. And so then what I did is I cooked the pasta, tossed it in the pesto, garnished it with the cauliflower florets, and then garnished that with the broccoli flower or the cauliflower flowers, so that you had the entire life cycle.
That's amazing.
Cauliflower in one dish.
That sounds so good.
And that's where my idea of vegetable cookery really. That's when I realized that there are no rules. There are guidelines that work, and then that's where I really started treating vegetables like meat. I brined cauliflower and then cooked it over the fire like a steak, and then I let the vegetables rest just like you would a piece of meat, so that because moisture juices go out and suck it in. And that's cooking carrots, beets inside the wood fire oven and treating it like a piece of meat has become like that's
interesting.
Really into. And I think just because vegetables, they're beautiful, they have a life cycle just like an animal does, but the difference is I grow most of the vegetables that I cook. So
that's awesome.
I have I literally sometimes with my daughter and my son, we plant the seeds and then we water and we watch it grow. So I have that ownership of that plant. And so when I cook it and I share it with my guests, that is an important part of me. You know, it's saying, you know, these carrots, me, my daughter, and my son, we grew this as a family, and you know, we watched it grow, and then me and my kids went out and harvested them together at the perfect time so that we can give them to you. And you know, when I share that with my cooks, you know, they kind of start feeding on that energy too, you know. And so when that momentum gets going in the kitchen, and then, you know, when we share that dish with the servers and the service staff, then they start feeding off that energy. And then at the end of the day, it gets out to the guest, and all of that built up camaraderie and energy is then very elegantly put through the server, and then the guest gets to experience that. So by all of this time, when they take that first bite of that carrot or, you know, beet, they are now picturing, you know, the chef in the fields growing these vegetables with the kids, and then, you know, picking them, and they're seeing, you know, my two beautiful kids pulling these things out of the ground. So when they taste it, they are now not only tasting the perfect carrot, if you will, but they're now tasting my story and my emotions and my feelings behind it, and why it's so important to me.
Yeah, it's interesting how even just growing something yourself or seeing the process behind it or seeing where it came from seems to have an actual tangible effect on the flavor.
It does.
Yeah,
It does.
because I've eaten the tomato that I knew my family grew. I still haven't successfully grown a tomato myself, but you know, my family grew some tomatoes, and eating that, it was just so good. And I am convinced that it was better than store-bought. I mean, it was sweet. It was almost more fragrant. Something about it just seemed.
No, it is, and that's because I don't care like where you go. You know, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Walmart, Fry's, whatever. You know, those tomatoes are not picked at the right time. You know, they're picked before they're ripe, so that by the time they get shipped,
They're ripen on the truck.
They're ripen on the way. You know, when you're in the garden, you know, like you literally sit there every day, you know, touching that tomato. You know, you got your eye on it, and then that one day you go out there and you touch it, and it's ready, and that is that tomato's day. That tomato is it wasn't perfect yesterday. It's not going to be perfect tomorrow. It's perfect then at that moment. And so, you know, and especially when you grow it yourself, like you've been waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
You've been waiting. You've been eyeballing that heirloom tomato. So there, that is, you know, I think, you know, if you want to get philosophical, if you will, that's the soul of cooking, I think, is the, you know, not just how it's processed, but the story behind it. And, you know, I always try to give every farmer, whether or not it's protein, duck, cow, pig, all the way up to the Delta Blues for blueberries in Sacramento. I try to give all of those farmers their time on the menu. It's not about me on the menu. It's really about sharing those stories and informing the servers and the service staff of their stories as well, so that, you know, every guest is different. Some guests don't give a shit about the story behind it, but some people do. And when you share those stories, you know, the crazy stories.
That's the thing, though. I think, because I even will be one of those types that will go, okay, yeah, I get it comes from this region and whatever, but how does it taste? But I think inherently as humans, we love a good story, even if we don't admit it, because we'll put value on things. Like if you know something was, you know, like you said, there was a farmer feeling it to see if it's perfectly ripe before picking it. Even if hypothetically there wasn't a molecular difference between that and the one they got at Whole Foods, even though there probably is, something about knowing that arduous process that a person was there, it just makes it taste better. There's something, and I don't even think it's like, even the people that go, whatever, just give me the food. I think subconsciously still, like it does affect the flavor and the experience for sure. That story is huge. I mean, it's why brands have to have good brand storytelling, or else people don't want to support. They don't even want to give them their money or buy their product or even be a part of what they're doing if they don't have a good story. Yeah, and I think stories.
I truly believe that, and I don't know what it is either. But there, again, like I think there is an essence or a soul to what we do, and I think, you know, add that into your senses. You know, you got taste, smell, sight, hearing. When you hear the crackling of a beautiful pork belly, but then I think adding in that story, and especially, you know, with big box
That's like the
brands,
brain part. You got
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
you know, like really, and I think what it could be also is, and this is like totally just my idea and that I just came up with now. I think you stop and you really actually taste it. You know, when you hear that story, I think you're actually literally stopping and actually thinking about what you're eating. You've heard this story, and now you're not just kind of eating it and saying, okay, that's a good carrot. You're actually, you take a bite.
Yeah,
and
contemplating.
You're thinking about that story as you eat the carrot. Or as you can see, I love carrots.
Yeah.
But that could be what it is. You know, I don't know what it is. Sharing stories, and again, that's what the dinner table is all about, is sharing stories. And, you know,
what's that scene? There's a movie where there's like I think he's a mobster and he cuts garlic with a razor blade. Do you know?
Goodfellas.
That is Goodfellas.
And
Okay.
side story, that is Martin Scorsese's father in real life.
Oh, really? That's funny, because we know as cooks that like the fact he's cutting it with a razor blade is not really any different than like if he used like a sharp shun knife or something. But the fact that he's like, this is my method that I've been doing and this is how I do it, and then they do a close-up shot of showing him cutting it with it. There's something about that even though you could do it with a knife, it's so unique, and he has this method he uses, and he adds his own personality into it, that it almost makes me want that aglio e olio. Is that what it was? I think
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, even more. It makes me want that pasta dish even more, because I'm like, oh, he really is trying to get that as thin as possible. Like, okay, I've never seen garlic melt into something, but he's describing it in a way.
Here into the pan, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. It's humanity. I think it's that deep part inside of our soul and our hearts that, I think especially nowadays, everybody's so disconnected. We all think we're connected, but with social media and whatnot, we're not. We're so disconnected.
Right.
And
even that steakhouse, that fine dining experience is still fast food to some extent, because you're going from, maybe from work to that restaurant to a bar, or maybe these days you're going back home for a beer, but you're going from one to the next and not necessarily thinking about where did they get this, beef? Like what is being done that allows me to sit in this seat and enjoy this good food, and like who are these people that. And I realized recently, because I never worked as a server. My girlfriend's been a server, and I've known people that, that's been a decent part of their life experience, is like, just that direct contact with this. Well, I worked at Chick-fil-A actually, as a teenager, so I kind of experienced some of it, because we tried to go above and beyond with hospitality. We'd go out into the dining room and get people refills, and this was a fast food restaurant, but we'd still go out and be like, hey, can I get you a refill? And something about that, I realized that hospitality, like you were saying earlier, is actually a huge part of dining. And I found when I appreciate that service I'm getting and the smile on the person's face, except in New York. I feel like most servers don't smile in New York, but
I don't think a lot of people smile in New York in general.
Yeah, that's true. I try to make up. I live in New York. I try to make up for it sometimes, but it's a weird thing. Some people almost seem to judge you for smiling in New York. Like, what's your fucking problem? Yeah. Who do you think you are? Yeah. No, but I think they have their head down to the grindstone. They're trying to get after it, which I can respect. But yeah, I was taking a trip to the South recently to visit my family, and I was at this place called, I think it was called Cootie Brown's, and it's just like this. It's in Bristol, Tennessee. I think it's Bristol, Tennessee, and that place is like the home of country music or something. and they had just like Southern food, like New Orleans stuff, and then Memphis food and stuff like that. And I had eggs Benedict, and it was like they did a really cool presentation, and then they had key lime pie, and I had iced tea. But the server, she was really, she had a mask on because of the current situation, but you could tell like her eyes were so creased, like she had this big smile on her face, and she just goes back like, "Can I get anything else for you? How you doing?" And I stopped for a moment. And I realized, like, man, this is probably half my experience right now. Like the fact that there's this person like checking in on me, like, bringing me the food. And there is the cook, which I never saw because they're hidden behind doors. But I used to not appreciate that as much. And I think there is a real big part of it is that, like, let's say you're dining alone. Like I was on a road trip in the car by myself. If it had just been like fast food and then I go sit and eat by myself, it's a totally different experience, Whereas because I was sitting at a table and this person was like, "Hey, how you doing?" and like sharing a smile, and it was contagious, so I was smiling too. And then it was almost like it suddenly became almost a community experience, like I was almost sharing a table with that server because she was so hospitable, the whole time. And there's something to that. I think that's a big part of the dining experience is really realizing like, oh, this, well, and I think it helps when there's really good service, but really appreciating that fact that all these people are coming together to create this beautiful and delicious meal for you.
Going back to Thomas Keller again, Man Crush, what is it? Man Crush Wednesday, I guess. There's a TED Talk with him, and it's great. It's called The Reach of a Restaurant. And he goes into detail and he shows different pictures of everybody, from the gardener to the dishwasher to the ladies that clean the carpet, all the way up to the chefs and the cooks and the servers and the wait staff and the back servers and the food polishers. And the whole point of that is for him to say, like, we are doing all of this for you. We are nothing without you. So all of this stuff you see and all of the things you don't see is for you. And so, and that is, I think, true. Like you were saying about fast food, true hospitality, I think it needs to be taught and groomed. But when you, like the server you're just talking about, there is something that I think you're born with hospitality in you, and you can't teach that true hospitality. I think that.
Oh, you think it's either you have it or you don't?
Yeah, much. Like the always putting somebody first. Like I said earlier, I do this to try to give people what I'm looking for is happiness. So I try to go above and beyond to make sure that guest is happy. Do I want to serve ketchup on my 6-course tasting menu when it comes to the beef? No, I don't. But I will, because if that's what the guest wants and that's what's going to make that guest's experience amazing and that's what makes them comfortable, then who am I to say no? Who am I to say, well, that's not what I was envisioning? It's my job to make, people feel welcome. That it's my job to make.
Is that part of why you would make the distinction earlier? You mentioned that you'd call cooking more of a craft rather than an art, because as opposed to it being like a chef on high going, would you like to taste my vision? It's more like a design, a design experience that's then adaptable to their needs or their wants, because you want them to have an amazing time.
Sure, and I think so with my pop-up, for instance, I say no substitutions. And what I'm trying to do is that's, I hope nobody's listening. I'm trying to vet.
Probably no one is.
No, we're going to get a lot of people, but what I'm trying to, I think it's more of a vetting process. I do have a vision, and I do have a menu, but when I say no substitutions, if you have an allergy, absolutely. If you, I'm trying to vet out those people who say, who are trying to, try to go ahead and make their own menu. That's not what I'm looking for, but, I want people to see my vision. I want people to taste my food, but I want them to do that in a way that makes them happy and makes them
Yeah.
comfortable. So I will always do whatever I can to make that happen. You know, I think with the tasting menu format, it you know, especially like for my pop-up dinner, for instance, I have what I have on hand. You know, and that's for a reason. One, because that's what's growing in the garden, and I've cooked just for that amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I still will do, like, you know, if you don't want a lot of salt, let me know. Or if you need more salt, I think it's very pretentious of chefs, and especially those old school chefs who refuse to put salt and pepper shakers on the table because, you know, it's seasoned perfectly the way chef said to. You know,
Right.
that is pretension, and it's
Yeah.
kind of, it's just gross to me. You know, everybody's palate is different, and you know, I've had dishes that have failed. You know, where I had the vision
Oh
and they
yeah.
put it on the table and or the plate. I'm like, that doesn't look what I thought in my head, and then when you taste it, it doesn't work. Um, you know, and I like feedback. There are some chefs out there who just, they don't want feedback. They expect you to eat the food the way they do. You know, I've heard chefs, you know, somebody asks for something well done, you know, like a piece of Wagyu beef cooked well done, you know, and the chef's like, no, 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 I'm not doing that. That's like, that's not fair to the product. And you know what? That guest is paying for this experience.
Yeah.
You know, this guest wants to experience Wagyu beef. This guest is willing to pay for this, but that guest's like their beef well done. That's probably how they grew up. That's probably how their mother ate it. That's probably how their father ate it. That's what they know. So it's our job to
Yeah.
give them that experience. And, you know, it's not our job to tell them what is okay to eat and
Yeah.
what's okay to eat. And I think that goes back to hospitality, being welcoming, making somebody feel comfortable, going above and beyond to make somebody feel comfortable. And that's,
Right.
again, like, you can't teach that. You know,
Yeah, and
it's
I don't know if a restaurant's the best place for that education anyway. Like, hey, medium rare is better than well done. I
yeah,
I think it can happen. Like, I knew this guy when I was a teenager. This is my first. I used to be like, oh, I ate things like well or medium well, just because I didn't eat much steak at the time. I didn't really understand much about it.
sure.
And this guy was like, oh, try this steak. It's medium rare. And his trick was he would always push people, and it wasn't at a restaurant. He was just making a bunch of steak, a bunch of guys hanging out.
Sure.
He had a marinade that was dark. It was some kind of dark marinade, and so even if he cooked it medium rare, it didn't look red, because the dark marinade.
Sure.
And I thought that was really clever because there's a way he's
Oh,
actually acknowledging that some people don't want to see that color, but
sure.
he still prepared it in a way where it was amazing. And so, that to me actually convinced me, oh, I like medium rare.
Sure.
Whereas if someone just was trying to say like, you have to eat like the reddish, I mean, I might have, because I was pretty exploratory, but I could see a lot of people just going, oh no, I know I don't like how it looks. But this guy actually adapted and came up with a marinade that kind of hid in color, but still cooked it perfectly.
What a stinker.
Yeah, it was really clever.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you about the restaurant is not the place to have that conversation, nor do I feel that it's anybody who works in that restaurant's job to tell a guest what is appropriate for them. It's I
Right.
think that, it's food shouldn't be pretentious.
What was that movie? What's it called? The Big Night or something? And it has have you seen that? It's like two Italian brothers. I think it's the actor Tucci. I forgot his name. Anyway, but his brother is like this chef, and he's from Italy, and they're in America, and he's he'll cook pasta a certain way, or make just make these different dishes, and then he wouldn't even want people to order like pasta and meatballs, for example, like spaghetti and meatballs,
I haven't seen
because
that.
yeah, but it's a really good movie.
Okay.
But he was a really talented chef, but he was just so irritated at every time a guest would want. And guess what? They weren't a very popular restaurant, even though his food was amazing and he knew all these techniques. Everyone would go to the sort of bastardized restaurant down the street where they had good cooks, but they were willing to actually adapt to the local palate and make dishes that people actually wanted to eat based on what they were looking for. And they made it clear that this guy was an amazing chef. It was just this tricky situation where he was letting, I guess, his ego get in the way of serving, food that people would actually eat.
Sure.
But yeah, I recommend it. I think it's called The Big Night. But it was
I'm gonna check it out. Yeah, I think again, people go out to restaurants because they want to have an experience. Oh, what the hell just happened?
I lost your video, but your audio is still there.
Yeah. What the heck is going on here? Okay. Oh, there. That was different. My phone is literally having a seizure. Right?
Oh, dang.
There we go.
Actually, on that topic of having an art or chef's vision and what makes a good hospitality experience, what would you say is actually something to look out for when looking for a good restaurant? What are some of the telltale signs of a place that's going to have good food and good, just be an enjoyable experience and delicious experience?
Depending on what you're looking for, I think the first thing to look for is the restaurant full? I think is the first thing. But I think, I think in the world of Yelp, Google reviews and whatnot, I think what I look for, I usually know who the chef is, or I'll look at the menu and know if it's something that I'm interested in or not. But I love looking to see the reviews on the service, because like you, I think that's, I don't, when I go out to dinner now, I'm not going out to dinner to nitpick the chef. I'm going to have just, to have a good experience. And so I look for the service and see people use the word, like they were so hospitable. They were so welcoming. One of the things that I am all about is, that going above and beyond with service. Mm-hmm. And I love hearing that, the simple happy birthday or knowing your name. It's the very small, minute details that people remember. Those are what you'll see in the reviews. And if it's a good restaurant, you will see the same comments, like they wished us happy birthday on our way out.
Best service in town.
Yeah, the best service in town. Or, when the server walked away, the server folded our towel. Or my daughter dropped a fork and the server was immediately there. Those are the things that you will see over and over and over again. If you're reading the reviews and they're just talking about how good the food is, and you don't see a lot of things about service and all you see is the same stuffy thing about food, you're probably still going to have a great experience, but you'll know by reading the reviews.
Because people will comment on the service.
Exactly. There's a restaurant, my favorite restaurant in the Bay is a restaurant in Glen Ellen, and it's called Glen Ellen Star. And Glen Ellen is a tiny little town right outside Sonoma. And the reason it's my favorite restaurant is the chef Ari and his wife and the servers. They're so welcoming. They go above and beyond. The servers are professional. They know their shit. They know exactly what they're selling, but they do it in a completely non-pretentious way. They do it in a way that's very welcoming. It's warm, like it feels genuine. And I think being genuine in the hospitality world is the true sign of when you're going to have an amazing experience in a restaurant. Because you'll have the stuffy service when it's not genuine. They're going by the notebook. They're going by the the coach's notes, and this is what you do, this is how you do it, smile, but when it's genuine and everybody in the building, that's kind of how they hire, is like, are you a good fit? Are you and that's because when it's genuine, you can feel it, like it's, you feel like you're being welcomed at grandma's house, because it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel like they're doing it for a tip. Does that make sense?
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, it's like almost
like
you're part of the
enjoy
community.
it.
It's this almost communal experience
Yeah.
where they're happy. They almost seem happy to see you because
It is, and I think that's when I love those servers who you can tell love their job. And again, I think because you're born with it or you're born without it, and when you can tell that the server loves their job and they love welcoming you in, like I love, one of my favorite things is when I go to a restaurant, and we sit down and start having conversations with the server, like that aren't based on the food. It's just like, like, who are you? Like, tell me something. And when you start having those conversations where you leave and you're like, man, I feel like I want to hang out with that person, like that's the kind of experience that I love, is when just like you leave like, man, that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's great when that happens.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions for you, Kyle. So you mentioned earlier your beginnings as a cook. What would you recommend in 2020 or maybe 2021, depending on when someone chooses to do it? But if someone wants to work as a cook professionally, or maybe eventually, work as a chef professionally, where would you say the best place to start is? They have no professional experience.
Okay. I think for me in a kitchen, I think starting at the bottom is very important for multiple reasons. I think starting out as a dishwasher is important. One, because it you get the idea of how the kitchen works. It's a different world back there. There's a different language, the way people move, having somebody constantly saying behind or above, that's a weird thing to hear. But it also makes you respect the dishwasher. In my kitchens, if I see a cook or even a sous chef, talking down to a dishwasher, you're out. You know what I mean? Like you get one strike and then you're out. Because those guys, they don't make a lot of money. They usually work 2-3 jobs. And being a dishwasher sucks. But it's the most important job. Like, if a cook calls out of work, as a chef, I'm like, if they're sick or whatever, I'm like, okay, I got your station. When a dishwasher calls out, it's like, we got to get somebody else in here. Who can we get? Because it's such an important job. So I think starting there gives you, if you're green as all hell, I think that it teaches you, the rhythm of the kitchen, the heartbeat of the kitchen, but it also makes you respect the dishwasher because you've been there. For me, I started out as a dishwasher. And so if I do need to, I know how to jump on that dish machine, have a system in place, get it going, and help. I think that's a good place to start, and then going from that to a preps, and from there.
And how would someone go? How would someone make that transition into?
For me, it was the prep cook no call no showed, and so they pretty much were like, "We have another dishwasher coming in. You're going to be on prep," and I was like, "Okay." But if you're one of the ways that I've moved forward as a cook is I took that initiative. I told the chef. I made it very clear that I did not have any reservations and I did not hold back. I made it clear. And I think, if something you're interested in, you just tell the chef, like, hey, I've been in the dish pit for 6 months or 5 months, whatever. Chef, I really want to move forward. I really want to proceed. And I think becoming a prep cook is very important too. Again, you're not at that line cook status. You're not at the chef level. But if you're green, prepping is where you get the opportunity to start those basic knife cuts, the basic techniques.
Right.
The peeler. This is a paring knife. This is a chef's knife.
And the great thing about that approach too is that, let's say you're doing dish pit during lunch, and maybe lunches are kind of slow. That's when a
Exactly.
lot of the prep work is happening. So you could knock out all your dishes and then ask the prep cooks,
Yeah.
is there anything I can help you chop or whatever? Any sauces I can help you mix or something?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that chef starts to notice, who is this guy or girl? What are they all about?
Yeah. Well, it's
That's it.
funny how people volunteer to take on more responsibility too. So when someone does that, it's actually asking for more responsibilities.
Yeah.
It really shows because I mean, I've worked in a lot of fields and it's very rare for someone to go, okay, I worked through the assignment you gave me. Now can I try something in this other area? That's
Sure.
so rare. I mean, so showing that initiative as a dishwasher, I think, is bound to skyrocket that person
Sure.
the
And
ranks
yeah,
pretty quickly, actually.
yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And that's, for me, that's how I got ahead is, I, um, like I said, when get into something, if it's gardening, I don't just half-ass it. I go full throttle, and
Mm.
cooking was the same thing. So I would bug the shit out of my chefs. Like, hey chef, I really want to learn how to butcher meat. I really want to learn how to butcher a pig. And they'd be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna pay you to learn how to do it. Like if you like I pay you to come in and do your job. So what did I do? I started coming in on my days off. Like if I knew the chef was butchering New York's and ribeyes or whatever that day, or butchering lamb and New York's and meat, I would come in on my day off, not clock in, work for free, just so that I can watch. I don't have to worry about setting up my station. I don't have to worry about mise en place. Like I can just watch and take notes. Um, and then that progressed into me showing up to work 5, 6 hours early, not working, not clocking in, but either getting ahead of my mise en place so that I can watch the chef, or slow down on it so that I can kind of see what the chef is doing,
Mm-hmm.
or have him pull me aside, and show me. But then what that also does is, like you said, it shows initiative. So then that chef, if he's a good chef, um, for me, I pay it forward. So if he's a good chef and you've already shown that initiative, then when he's gonna do something cool, like something that you haven't seen before, he'll be like, "Hey, how's your station looking? Here, come check this out," and they see that initiative, so they push it forward. So yeah, I think when somebody shows initiative in the kitchen, a good chef, somebody who, you know, um, again, going back to Thomas Keller, one of the things he says that I truly believe in is, if you come into my kitchen and you don't leave better than me, then I failed. And
Wow.
what that means is, you know, if you've already been cooking or you've been a chef for X amount of time, you've already learned things from other chefs, right? You've picked up on techniques, you've seen other things, and then what he's trying to say is, like, I'm going to mentor you, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to give you the tools to succeed, so that when you do leave, you are now leaving better than I am, because you've already had these experiences, you've already had these techniques, and then I've taught you what I know and what I can give you. So now, if you leave a restaurant having not learned anything, which
Yeah.
there's always something to learn, whether that's what to do or what not to do, um, then that chef or front of the house person has failed you, because, the only way we are going to keep moving forward, and I think especially nowadays, there's so much more that we can teach as chefs, that we have to pay it forward, and we have to keep teaching um, the younger
Right.
cooks, that we keep going. But I think now, especially after COVID, we've all had a chance to reflect. I've had multiple life changes with COVID. COVID was one, and then a loss of a relationship that really fucked with me, and then also just dealing with my own personal demons that I've had since I was a teenager. I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I think now we have that opportunity to um, start showing cooks how we can be better. How we can start breaking that stupid mold of, you have to work 18 hours. Like sometimes you don't need to be there, but you feel bad, as a chef, if
Mhm.
you leave, like, oh my God, I've been here for 9 hours and there's nothing to do but, you know, we've had it so ingrained in our heads that we have to be there. So now we feel bad for wanting to go home and see our families. You know, we start to feel bad for wanting to go see a movie with our girlfriends or whatnot. You know,
that's the interesting thing, isn't it?
now
Like,
have
we were truly
opportunity
dedicated to. Sorry.
going back into the restaurants. We have an opportunity here to we can really focus on teaching the same techniques, you know, the old school mentality, yes, but now we have an opportunity to start helping make a change in our industry to where, you know, I think mental health is a big thing right now. You know, I think that it sucks that it took Anthony Bourdain dying to wake us up, you know, to realize that, you know, I've lost my marriage, you know, I've lost relationships, you know, I didn't get to see my daughter walk, you know, for the first time because I was at work. And I think we have the opportunity now to start teaching cooks how to be a better cook and be a better chef, but also have a quality of life. You know, I think we had time to reflect, and I think, you know, being at home with my family, like I'm cooking with my parents almost every night for the first time in ever. You know, and it's made me slow down, and you know, I'm FaceTiming because my kids are still in the Bay, and I'm here, so I'm FaceTime like with my kids, and you know, I want to be part of that lifestyle. I want to see my kids grow. If that makes, excuse me.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that happens with people who are dedicated to their craft, that sometimes it becomes almost the only thing, right? Like I know I've experienced, like, oh man, I care really deeply about the work I'm doing, so I'm going to work long hours, even if I'm not. Sometimes you're not even getting paid for the long hours because you just care about getting better. But sometimes it's like, especially with restaurants, the unfortunate thing about restaurants is I feel like a lot of them, they often don't have your back. So there's a dangerous balance of, you know, sure, yeah, you should be working your ass off to do an amazing job, but then don't sacrifice to so much that you're not, you know, that you're living an unhealthy life. Because you might get fired because of some issue that you weren't even aware of, just out of the blue, or you might, you know, who knows, like you don't really know what's going to happen. So I do think it's important, and designers are similar. Like there's a lot of designers that'll work for peanuts because they love the work they do. You know, they're like, they love designing logos and posters and stuff, so they'll, you know, take like $50 and then work for 2 months on it, you know, and that sort of thing. And so part of that mentorship of the newer people at whether they're a cook or whatever, I think a big part of it is teaching, like, hey, you know, like, question, like, is this sustainable? Like, are you actually living the life that you want to live? That being said, I do think it's important for especially beginners to put in the hard hours and
absolutely
grind
no,
at the,
hey,
you know,
look,
yeah.
I am not encouraging
Like
the
lazy
changing of the guard, if you will. I still am an old school chef. I believe in hard work. You know, like in your 20s, you need to, you know what I mean? Like this craft, it is hard, you know, and I'm not by any means trying, like if you are a chef and you need to be there 18 hours, then suck it up. You need to be there 18 hours. Oh, I'm not trying to say that's not the fact. What I am trying to say is, you know, that it doesn't need to get to the point where you're there for 18 hours because that's the way it's been done and that's the way it should keep going. I think there's
like you're almost, it's not even an emergency, you're just kind of like, oh, you better do that, you know.
Like, I've had so many times as a chef where I'm like, you know, I'm like kind of twiddling my thumbs and it's not busy. I have my sous chefs there, but I, you know, it's like I feel fucking awkward saying I'm gonna go home, you know, because I don't, like, I'm afraid everybody's gonna look at me with judgmental eyes, you know, and I think that's kind of what I'm talking about, is getting rid of that stigma of, you know, I'm all for being married to your job, I'm all for, you know, like that lifestyle, but I think if we can start at one small point in this industry to make a change, I think then they can blossom. You know, I pull my cooks into the walk-in on Anthony Bourdain Day, for instance, and I tell them, I'm like, look, this isn't necessarily about Anthony Bourdain. We are, as Anthony Bourdain said, wanting to become a cook, there's something wrong with you right there. When you want to become a professional chef and a cook and you're serious about it, there's already something off with you anyway. You know what I mean? So I think
you're basically just asking for pain.
Yeah, but mental illness strives, and I think if we can open that door, and I always tell my cooks, look, my fucking phone is always on me. I was like, if you're fucking having suicidal thoughts or you're just mentally burned out, fucking call me and say like, hey chef, I can't come to work today. Like, I'm burned out. Like, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to tell anybody. That's nobody else's business. But like, you need to take that day, because I do not want that. Like, I don't want to be the reason for that guy going to that next step. And I think getting rid of that stigma, and if we can get rid of that, then we can start working on the drug use in the restaurant business.
Oh man,
yeah. All stems from, why is cocaine so prevalent in the restaurant business? Because we're all working these crazy hours, and dealing with stresses. And I think if we can do that, then we can have this silver lining of the old school meets the new school of, if you need to be there 18 hours, then you need to be there 18 hours. But getting rid of the stigma saying you have to be there for 18 hours because that's just the way
that's the way it goes. That's the way it
goes. That old school mentality of like, that guy's a pussy because like because his girlfriend broke up with him and now he's like an emotional wreck. That guy, you know what I mean? If like, those are the kind of walls that I would like to see torn down, is where, not necessarily where everybody sits and sings Kumbaya, or that you're not
just having empathy,
but just having this sense of this is still a human being, and we go above and beyond to make other people happy, and then we shit on each other, and I think that's the kind of world that I want to see. And that's like, I'm right now in my career, like I am focused on me right now. I'm focused on my mental health, and I want to, you know what I mean? I have, like I said, these demons that go back years, and they've all just like, I want to be set for me. I want to be set for my kids. And then that, I think, will move into a much better experience for my guests. Once if we can break down that barrier,
you can't really make other people happy if you're neglecting your own happiness.
Like, you can't, what they say, you can't truly love if you don't love yourself. I think it's the same thing. I think if we start having cooks that are not batshit crazy, and could you imagine how much better the experience will be if we have a kitchen full of sober cooks who aren't on the verge of like snapping, who, I think that, God, the opportunities are endless on, how much better food will be, you know what I mean? Like, then that's the,
Well, I think the good news is, since cooking became more of a glamorized profession, there are more people who may just be created by nature, that just, instead of becoming a cook by necessity, because obviously a lot of cooks, it's their last resort, like maybe they're an ex-convict, or then maybe because there's more of this culture of like creativity and coming to it because you actually want to be a cook, maybe that is helping changes the culture as well. Like, it's not just a culture of like, get the hard work done, get your paycheck and get out. It's more like there's actually people watching cooking competitions, like sitting there for hours, binge watching
Chef's Table,
Master Chef and stuff.
I got my parents watching Chef's Table, like, I never saw that coming, with my parents watching a show about these chefs and like, just, jaw dropped, and just like, that was amazing. That was an amazing story. And I think what you see now is even these chefs, Sean Brock, Dan Barber, like the idea of mental health is becoming a thing, because it sucks, Like,
yeah, things need to change.
Sean Brock, is very open about getting sober and, going to therapy. I think that was a bold move. But I think it's very important. I'm in therapy now, and it sucks opening up, but it's, I don't give a shit what anybody else like in my industry would say about that. If you're going to talk down about it, then maybe you should go to therapy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is a really awesome step. And I think you're hearing a lot more people talking about it, and you're hearing a lot more chefs. You're starting to see that opening up, and I'm super excited about it because like, I'm a chef, and I want to see our industry continue to grow. And just like the chefs before me, I want to be a part of that. I want to, be able to look back and say, like, I was part of that movement, just like the civil rights movement or the Q and whatnot, like LGBTQ, excuse me, movements. And like, those are moments in history. And I want to be able to say, like, I was part of that movement where, chefs became healthy, and like,
Yeah.
smiling chefs, like that would be, that would make it all worth it. For like the ugly hands and the burns and the long nights, that would be worth it for me if I am able to be a part of that and see that change in my lifetime.
Well, it sounds like your new endeavor with the garden pop-up type restaurant is a good move in that direction, because it seems like something that would take a staff of more like a patient, attention to detail, empathetic, staff. So it seems like a step in the right direction.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
That's what I want, is I want to be able to have that restaurant. I don't want to be a restaurant that's like full of like 100 seats. I really want it to be 12 to 15 seats where it's me and one cook and maybe an apprentice, to where like, everything is hands-on and everything is like, mentoring, instead of having this huge team of cooks that maybe gets 5 minutes of time with the chef, have that one person where I'm just like, as an internship, just giving 100% of my time into teaching them and grooming them.
Right.
And I think that's the world I want to see. I think, especially with COVID now, though, that the rules are going to be changing, the game's going to be changing, and so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a crazy time.
It is.
All right, I have another question. So
Okay.
you mentioned Anthony Bourdain. So he had a guilty pleasure that he would sometimes talk about, which was Popeye's mac and cheese. And he said sometimes he would sneak in, with sunglasses and hope that no one noticed him, and he'd order just their mac and cheese. It's like this gooey, this gooey, messy little styrofoam container mac and cheese, but it was his like guilty pleasure, And one of my pet peeves actually has been some chefs who have this amazing food and they're like, oh yeah, we use fresh ingredients, all this, but they almost refuse to admit that they have a guilty pleasure, like some food that's not necessarily the most elegant thing,
Sure.
but it's like, so I would ask you, like, what's your guilty pleasure food? Like, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be, anything specific, but what's that one thing that like you just keep coming back to?
Panera's broccoli cheddar soup.
Ah, okay.
It's one of those things where I will get down on that. You know what I mean? Like, and if my daughter or my son doesn't eat it, I'm gonna get down on theirs too. You know what I mean? That is great. And then I was introduced to it very, very recently from somebody very important to me. I think it's Hometown Buffet. And I went there, and this person was just like, look at all it's endless opportunities, endless, being able to, it's, again, there's something about the nostalgia of it. And but like, again, I like to think I have a very good palate for good food, good wine, good beer and whatnot. But I mean, I was a child once. I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I have memories.
It's like a theme park of food. Like,
Yeah.
I have similar memories as a kid. You just go to the buffet, you
Yeah.
pile a bunch of something on there, everything. You eat a little bit too much, and it's just, yeah.
I think there are a lot of chefs out there that take themselves way too seriously. You know, and it's like there's nothing wrong with having a guilty pleasure. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make you less of a chef, or that doesn't make your palate less refined because something you ate as a child
Right, like nourishes.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, if anything, that makes you stronger. You know, like I have done menus before where I have done broccoli cheddar soup, you know, and I've refined it.
Right.
You know, like it's, you know, you pour the soup table side and you see the broccoli florets and the flowers and whatnot. But it's at the end of the day, it's
awesome.
broccoli cheddar soup that was inspired by Panera. You know,
yeah.
and there's
sometimes the chains and sometimes those chains discover something where it really
get
works.
one thing right, and that's the, you know, I was just up in Napa visiting my kids before I came back to Tucson to continue helping with my family or my parents. But we went to Panera. That was like what the kids wanted, and I was just like the kids, you know.
Do you do the bread bowl?
I'm like Panera, and no, I get the half sandwich, the ham sandwich with the broccoli cheddar, and I just dunk that sandwich in the cheddar. Fuck, man, that now I want Panera.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. So, is there anything you want to plug? Like, what do you got going on right now, or your Instagram or website or anything?
You can check out my Instagram. It's at chef _Kyle _Young. You know, you can really start to get a vibe of who I am. You see some food, but a lot of it's vegetables and flowers. You know, my website's there. But like I said, right now I am still focusing on food. I'm writing menus. I'm writing recipes. You know, trying to keep my brain sharp. But for now, I'm focused on myself and my family. But you know, if anybody has questions on food, you can email me at Chef Kyle Young or chefkyleyoung@gmail.com. You know, and I will always answer questions. You know, for the home cook. Like, if you have a question, you can email me, and if I don't know it, we'll Google it together.
That's awesome.
You know, like, or you can DM me on Instagram. You know, I love talking to people about food, and I get excited about it. So, you know, yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Well, this has been a great chat. Thanks for coming on. We should chat again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be here. And sorry about the technical issues, but yeah, no,
no worries.
This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Take it easy.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.